Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary with a knife video. This is going to be a good one. This was on my list of most anticipated knives for 2015, the Zero Tolerance 0452. Now this is a variation on the very limited production knife from a couple of years ago, the 0454. It was like a composite blade with all kinds of crazy stuff going on, very expensive. This is not so expensive. It allows you know, guys like you and I, more casual users, more casual collectors to own something like that. Now, very nice blade. I like the design in the 0454, and I still like the design in the 0452. By the way, this does say CF, so it's the CF is designated right in the model number. I don't know why that is. You know, a lot of times Zero Tolerance does that when there's multiple options, right? You'll see a CF if there's also a G10 version or something. Anyway, maybe that's just because it has carbon fiber. Maybe that's indicating that more versions may be coming out of this knife, which would be really cool. Anyway, it's a Dmitriy Syncovich design. He's a Russian designer. They also did a special, another sort of limited knife that's only available through Russian distributors, and I don't think it's available anymore. I could be wrong, but I think now you're buying the sort of Russian version of this knife on the secondary market. So this knife in itself is a really cool blade. Love the carbon fiber, love the titanium, love the blade length and size. Now there's one thing I'll say about this that's a bit of a negative, and I say it more as a description than to say it's a detraction from the knife, because I still love this knife and I love carrying it. But when I try to tell you, hey, what's the philosophy of use? You know, who's buying this knife and why? I'm going to say it this way. It has a lot of features that could make it a combat knife, and then it has a number of features that could make it a gentleman's folder. And they're kind of in conflict with one another. Those two things don't really go hand in hand very well. So I don't know what to tell you other than to say this is more of a high-end everyday carry. Okay, could it be a defensive blade? You know, especially if you wear a suit but you want a big knife. Yeah. Is it fairly tough and fairly durable? Yeah. You know, I don't think this knife is going to let you down. However, it's not the kind of design that, let's say, the 0560 is, where it's just a beefy, strong, overbuilt knife, okay? This knife, I would say, yeah, you know, if you're a soldier, police officer, whatever, somebody who's going into combat with their blade, this would do the job for you. This one, I would say, if someone said, what about this? I would say, yeah, go with this one, okay? Anyway, that's a little bit besides the point, other than to say, when you talk about philosophy of use, when you talk about how you're going to use this knife, it's not really a combat blade, even though it has a lot of features, and it certainly has the blade shape of a combat blade. Okay, let's go on and get into the size and weight on this. This knife is 9 1/4 inches overall, 4 1/8 inch blade, 5 1/8 inch handle, weighs in at 4.6 ounces. Now that's actually really good. You know, you're kind of in the Spectacle military territory at that point. So if you really like the military, you probably would like this. And I would actually go so far as to suggest that the blade on this is going to be a little more durable. It's still a pretty fine point, but there's quite a bit of steel out here at the tip, especially compared to the military, which has that very, very fine, you know, a full flat grind blade. Here's my Endura. There's not nearly as much steel out here as there is here. So if you like that style, sort of a long, lean blade like the Endura or the police or the military, you'd probably like this knife, and I think it would give you just a little more strength in the blade. I'm trying to see if I've forgotten anything about the handle. Oh, it's just under, it's about 1/2 inch thick. So that, I don't usually mention that dimension unless it really stands out as really, really thin or really, really thick. This one's pretty standard fare. Okay, and yeah, 4.6 ounces is very lightweight for a huge knife, 9 1/4 inches. And now let's get into that blade, because that's one of the things that's really cool. The blade on this is a lot of blade. Okay, you've got 4 5/8 inches of length, but you've got almost 4.5 inches of cutting edge, a good 4 1/4 inches, let's put it that way. So that's really efficient. I like that use of blade. The other cool thing about it is for the handle size, you know, this blade takes up every bit of handle. You know, you could not make this blade any longer without having it sticking out here. So I really like that. I like that good efficient use of sort of space of that blade to handle ratio. It is S35V and blade steel. It's a flat grind, and it's sort of a high flat grind, even though this is not a very thick blade, okay? So sometimes a high flat grind means a really narrow blade. You only have, you know, an inch or so of total width. So in that 1 inch, you're not going to be able to go super, super wide or you know, super, super thin. It's going to have to be fairly aggressive, even though this is not a bad slicer. I've done a bunch of cutting with it, and it slices just fine, okay? The edge geometry is not quite as good as some others. You know, it's not as good as, say, the Domino, where, like, here you've got a really, really high flat grind and a really, really thin edge, so it's going to slice like crazy. This edge geometry is not quite as thin as this, okay? Why don't we go ahead and zoom in at this point so that I can show you some of these details in a little closer view. So, very nice grind lines. You've got this stonewash finish on the flat here. It's not on the back. It's interesting that they even bother. There is a stonewash finish here on this little flat portion where they've got the ZT logo, and everything else you see this grinder satin, which is really, really nice looking. Okay, the blade is quite functional. It's very, very fine in terms of, you know, it's slim and lean. It does slice fairly well, and of course would penetrate well, but as I've said before, I don't think this is really a combat design knife. So that's the blade. It's gonna, you know, good EDC blade. Obviously it's quite long for EDC tasks, but definitely does the job. It is a very smooth, fast opening knife, and that will bring us to lockup and deployment. Lockup and deployment on this is good and fun. It's a fast flipper. Now, it's interesting the way it feels different than some flippers you may have used. Let's say, I'm going to use the Domino for example. You know, the Domino, there's not a lot of blade, okay? So this arc, the size of this distance that the blade is traveling is not super long, where on this knife, you know, this blade is really, really long. So it's traveling a huge distance by the time it gets out. So the fact that it does move as fast as it does is actually pretty impressive. Let's compare it to a couple other blades. This is the Brous Blades T4. It's a very fast flipping knife, but because of the weight of that blade, it doesn't move quite as quickly as this one. The 0560, again, good flipper, but not nearly as fast as the 0454. Now, the detent on this is quite strong. In fact, of all the flippers I've shown you so far, the detent here is the strongest. And, you know, I think you're going to get a fairly high degree of consistency in that. I don't think you're going to see too many of these knives. In fact, I haven't heard of any that the detent is not strong. I think they're consistently going to have a pretty strong detent, and because of that, they're going to flip pretty well. However, that strong detent is going to be a little hard on your finger over prolonged use. That's just the nature of the beast. You get a really, you know, a good detent does mean it flips like crazy, but it's going to get a little tiring for you if you're flipping this out all day like I like to do. All right. By the way, that feature is now pretty common. Most new zero tolerances, whether you're talking about an 801 or a 0562 or this one or, you know, the 0450, the 808, they're all going to have a pretty strong detent. It's definitely become sort of a feature of zero tolerance blades. All right. Now, because of that detent, I said it is very fast. Let's now talk about the lockup. Lockup is good. I did hear a couple people complain about the lock sort of sliding over this way, and so I've done some really, you know, I've squeezed on this really hard and tried to get it to demonstrate that, but it's really good. Now, I've only ever heard one real big complaint about that, so I don't, again, I think if you're thinking about buying this and you watch that video and go, holy cow, is my lock going to slip over and be, you know, kind of crappy? I don't think that's like a common problem where everyone's complaining about that. The motion is quite smooth, not as smooth as others. I will say not nearly as smooth as, you know, the T4 is just amazing. The 0560 again is just amazing. You know, it just drops closed. It's more like, you know, it will drop if you shake it a little bit. You can see that. But it's not as smooth as some flippers you may be used to. Okay, I would compare it to the Southern. I would compare it to the Domino. I would compare it to the 0452. If you got any of those blades, they're smooth, but they're not silky smooth. You know, you're gonna have to shake it down a little bit to get it to close. Lockup. Now on the lock, it is a titanium frame lock. The cutout is here. Now, by the way, if you've been keeping up with the cold steel videos, they tested a 0300 and guess where it failed? Right at the relief cut, which is, you know, there's been discussion in the knife community sort of about what this relief cut does and how it affects strength. And specifically, there's been discussion, okay, I don't know if I have any that demonstrate this. No, I don't have any frame locks here right now that show this, but sometimes the relief cut will be made on the inside, sometimes the relief cut will be made on the outside. The demonstration that Cold Steel did, the 0300 did fail at the relief cut, okay? And so that I think is a real thing. You know, people who were interested in knives were accurate in identifying this as the place where that lock is going to fail. And sure enough, it did when you hung enough weight on it. There was lots of weight, more weight than you would ever be putting on your folding knife. So I actually thought that the 0300 did really well in that video. However, you just know a frame lock does have this weak point, which is not terribly pertinent to this video, but I do think, you know, I kind of thought in the back of my mind, the next time I do a frame lock video, I'm going to talk about that. This does have the stainless steel lock bar insert, and it also serves as an over travel stop. Now, one of the things I like about this is that because they were doing double duty with that, so the stainless steel lock bar insert here, you can probably see it about at that angle. Certainly if you just look through, you can see that, you know, oh, you've got an open cut going all the way up, and then it ends right here. You can see the little piece of steel that's extending back, and that's an over travel stop as well as a lock bar insert. So there's no lock bar stabilizer here like we're used to seeing on a number of zero tolerances, and I think that cleans up the knife and makes the lines a little nicer. You do have, you know, this nice carbon fiber side that's all just clean and clear, and so it's nice to kind of continue that theme on the locking side of the knife. Now, let's see. I don't think there's anything else I need to say about lockup and deployment. Works really well. I don't have any of the issues that I've heard some people talk about, so that's kind of cool. Let's then talk about this handle. It is a very attractive design, I think. You do have this decorative pivot here, which, I mean, the decorative pivots are kind of a thing right now. I don't know how I feel about it. Does it affect the function of the knife in any way? No. Does it make it look a lot prettier? Kind of, I guess. Would it ruin this knife if this pivot was just sort of a standard, you know, Torx screw? I don't think so. I think the knife would still be just as cool as it is. All right, now you may totally disagree with me and just think decorative pivots are the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that's fine if you do. The lanyard hole here is not tubed, which is kind of surprising for a knife at this level. Doesn't affect functionality, of course, in any way, but it's interesting that they've done that. The other thing that I found interesting is that they have a lanyard hole at all, because when you close this knife, there's this standoff right at the very, very back of the knife that I feel like would work just fine if you were going to put a lanyard on it. So I kind of, you know, to kind of go with the cleanness and simplicity of the design, I could see eliminating that hole altogether. Anyway, it's there, and it does certainly function. It's more than large enough for 550 cord if you want to do that. The pocket clip. Let's talk about this pocket clip, because this is one of the things that doesn't really jive, okay? You have this knife that is high-end, classy materials, you know, nice looking blade. You've got this very simple, classy titanium frame lock side, you know, this beautiful carbon fiber. Everything is very classy and elegant. And then you've got, you know, a bent up piece of metal for a pocket clip. Just a very, you know, this pocket clip is almost exactly like the pocket clip, and I mean almost exactly like the pocket clip that's on the Kershaw Knockout. Well, the Kershaw Knockout's like, what, a $50, $60 knife, and here you've got, you know, a $220 knife. You'd think you could class it up just a bit, okay? So is it the end of the world? No, and I do need to make this one comment. I actually like this style of clip, okay? I really, really favor these particular zero tolerance clips. I kind of wish that all knife companies would just say, hey, that's the clip perfected. Let's just put that clip on all knives. Now, after saying all of that, I kind of wish it wasn't on this one. I would like to see, you know, some kind of classier option here. Now, here's one thing I will say. There's not a lot out there right now, but you can bet that give it a couple months and you're going to find a lot of custom hardware for this knife. And one of the things I will be changing is that clip. I may try to find the custom standoffs as well. And I would say this is probably going to be cheaper. You know, if you do custom hardware on a 0560 or on a 0562 or a 0300 or other things, it often costs you around $100 to do all the hardware on the knife. There's not much hardware here to speak of, so it'll probably be a little more budget friendly. Maybe we'll do it all for $50 or $60, which would be nice. Clip, I definitely think will be going. As soon as I start seeing some clips that I like on eBay, I'll probably switch this out for a titanium clip. Just because I feel like this knife, the level of class and the level of fit and finish on this knife kind of is asking for a classier clip than what's found on it from the factory. All right, let's see here. I'm going to zoom back out. Overall, I think this is a really, really nice blade. I really like it. It's comfortable in hand. It carries exceptionally well. And I love the fact that even if I'm going to church or if I'm, you know, wearing shorts, something where weight is going to be an issue, I can carry this knife and it doesn't weigh me down, but I've still got that full 4-inch blade, which is really, really cool. In addition to that, I think the knife looks great. It's very classy. It's very slim and elegant. Overall, this is a great blade. I really like it. I've really enjoyed carrying it and using it and look forward to doing so for quite a long time. Would I recommend it? You know, absolutely I would recommend it. Now, if you're, you know, sometimes I think we collectors and YouTubers lose a little bit of perspective, and every once in a while I've got to stop myself and say, you know, hold on, if someone watches this video, and so if you're watching this right now and you are only wanting one knife, okay, and you just want one knife to do everything all the time, this knife may not be that knife for you. If you know, I don't think this knife belongs in the forest. I don't think it belongs, you know, in a soldier's loadout. I don't think it belongs in, you know, a truck driver or construction worker's pocket who needs a knife that they can just pound on and rely on. I think there are other knives that are probably more suited to that role. Okay, so I'm not telling you not to buy the knife. If you love the knife, I don't care what you do. If you want to take this to a construction site every day because you just love it and it makes you feel good to have it in your pocket, hey, more power to you. But if you're wanting me to say this is an overbuilt, super tough, zero tolerance, I'm not going to say that. I don't think it's suited to hard use tasks. I think it's more of a gentleman's EDC. I think it's great. I think it's beautiful. As a collector, as an enthusiast, I totally love it. And I've carried it a lot and used it a lot. And certainly I would say it's a great EDC blade, but it's just not a great hard use knife. If you came to me and said, hey, I need something I can take into combat or something that, you know, I can take out bushcrafting or something like that, I would probably steer you more in the direction of the 0560 or the 0300 or a Cold Steel Recon 1, you know, I don't know. Lots of different blades. Still a great blade, just not as all around purposeful as some other blades are out there. Okay, so that's my take on the zero tolerance 0452. If you stuck with me this long, good on you. If you have one of these, let me know. And here's what I'd like to really have you do. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're a zero tolerance fan, I would love to hear your thoughts on sort of the general direction of zero tolerance the last couple of years. Okay? If they converted you to be a big lover of zero tolerance with the 0300 or the 0560, what do you think about what they're doing now? You know, do you like that direction? And I'm going to tell you, I'll probably use these comments because I'm getting ready to make a video about zero tolerance. And one of the things I want to discuss is the zero tolerance that sort of I became a fan of and really wanted, compared to the zero tolerance of today, where, you know, you're not seeing those Strider-inspired, overbuilt, super durable, super tough folders that I kind of felt that would used to be typical of zero tolerance. Anyway, go ahead and comment if you want to about that. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll talk to you soon.